Okay, well, thank you and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's update on the assessment model review. Today we have Minister of Municipal Affairs, Tracy Allard, who's joining us via video conference. Al Kemery, President of the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, Tim McMillan, President and CEO of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and Tristan Goodman, President of the Explorers and Producers Association of Canada. With that, we will get started. Please, Minister Allard, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. As the press secretary noted, I'm joining via video conference as I'm adhering to the recommendations and guidelines from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and it's my pleasure this morning to announce the results of the assessment model review. When the review started, we had 4 scenarios proposed, scenarios A through D. These 4 scenarios would have cost municipalities anywhere from a 7% to a 20% reduction of their tax revenue. When I was sworn in as Minister of Municipal Affairs on August 25th, my first decision was to hit pause on this review to do more consultations. I felt we needed a better understanding of our municipalities' concerns and of the overall impact of any change. I believe that you can't tinker with the pieces without taking a step back and looking at the whole of what you've done. We needed to find balance between the municipal concerns and the energy concerns. During the consultation, we met with many stakeholders, including those that are here with me today, CAP, EPAC, and RMA, as well as AUMA, the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, the Canadian Energy Pipelines Association, the Canadian Property Tax Association, Alberta Assessors Association, and the vast majority of municipalities across the province. We heard from municipalities that if we continued with the 4 scenarios, they'd be forced to raise taxes significantly or cut services or both. And we heard from oil and gas producers that if we did not address their tax concerns, they would no longer remain viable. This was a very complex and nuanced decision as every factor caused a domino effect. We had to think about the proposed assessment changes and how they would impact things like education taxes, intermunicipal collaborative frameworks, police funding, seniors and recreation funding, and ultimately all ratepayers, both commercial and our residential taxpayers. As the new minister, I indeed landed in the middle of this complicated and urgent issue. This decision kept me awake at night as I knew the importance of getting it right for all Albertans. We have seen a triple threat of a global collapse of energy prices, the worst economic times since the dirty 30s, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Unemployment is high, businesses are struggling to survive. Many Albertans are trying to figure out how to pay their mortgage or their rent. Through these difficult times, the government has been working on plans to make life better for Albertans. I feel with our decision today, we have balanced the needs of both municipalities and the oil and gas industry. It was tapping into the collective wisdom of the leadership across Alberta's municipalities and industry that helped us land here today. We tailored this solution based on what we heard. This is why we did not choose one of the 4 scenarios. The energy industry and municipalities continue to have a mutually dependent relationship. Municipalities need a strong oil and gas industry to create jobs for residents. The energy industry needs municipalities to provide communities so their workers can live, raise a family, and enjoy a healthy quality of life. And they also need municipalities to maintain roads and bridges for safe access to those workers to their work sites. Our plan is intended to draw investment to the energy industry here in Alberta and help create and sustain jobs. I think the most compassionate thing we can do right now for Albertans is to create jobs and investment for our communities. We worked on a solution to get us through these tough economic times. We also sought to find long-term viability and sustainability with our municipalities and within our energy sector. We all need to work together to create the most competitive environment to do business in this country. That means the province, municipalities, and industry all together. We want businesses across the world to think Alberta when they are looking to invest. This is key to attract new investment, create more jobs, grow the economy, and ultimately expand the assessment base for our municipal partners. That is why we dropped our corporate tax rate down to 8% in June. And this is why To support this, there will be no property taxes charged on new wells and pipelines for 3 years to kickstart investment for our energy industry here in Alberta. This will be reflected in the 2021 assessed values and applied for taxation in 2022, 2023, and 2024. This provides effective incentive for future investment decisions for our industry partners at a time when we need it more than ever. We will also eliminate the well drilling equipment tax, or WDET. Eliminating this tax will encourage industry to drill more wells within our communities at this time. As a result, this will create more jobs and more tax revenue for our municipalities in the long term by again expanding their assessment base. In addition, to keep the less productive oil and gas fields viable across the province, we will lower their assessment. These measures will provide much needed certainty to investors, municipal governments, and of course to local taxpayers. We are doing these initiatives because you matter. Your businesses matter, your families matter, your livelihoods matter, and your communities matter. Municipalities have told us they are willing to be partners in supporting our economy, including the oil and gas sector, and I would like to thank them for that commitment. I expect them to do all that they can to avoid increases to ratepayers, and I believe that they will do just that. And that's why we have today Mr. Kemry from the Rural Municipalities of Alberta. We have Tim McMillan from Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, and we have representatives from Explorers and Producers Association of Canada, all together supporting this announcement. Alberta, we really are in this together. Municipalities, industry, and the provincial government all working together. I want to thank everyone here, including Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, who also supported this announcement, for their engagement in this collaboration. Every one of you have helped us make the best decision possible for Albertans at this challenging time. This announcement shows the benefits of collaboration and should result in visibly local results in community after community across Alberta. It also shows that when we find common ground to support each other and work together, we can and will create better outcomes. We will need to continue working together as this conversation will continue. These measures are intended to provide much needed certainty to industry, investors, municipalities, and other taxpayers for the next 3 years. In the coming months, Alberta's government will be developing a plan for a longer-term review of the regulated assessment system, including the ongoing issue of unpaid taxes. We remain committed to continued consultations and open dialogue together with industry and our municipal partners. I'll close with this. Premier Jason Kenney always says, tough times don't last, but tough people do. Albertans indeed are tough, and we will get through these difficult times stronger than ever. Again, thank you to all who helped us in coming to this decision, and I will turn it back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Kemry, go ahead.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon to everybody that's in the audience. It is a little bit different doing this without the reporters in front of us taking the pictures and asking the questions, but we'll work our way through it. I want to start by thanking Minister Allard for a lot of different things, but the main piece was in her efforts to try and come to a solution, her time that she took to work around and visit the many, many municipalities within this province and get a good feel for what was important to them and what was the stressful piece of all this so that she understood it well. This has been a tough time, this whole discussion through the summer with for my members and for all the members of RMA, as we saw some significant challenges coming forward in the previous scenarios. And so that is why we've supported this in the form that it is right now, because this is a much modified approach to dealing with the challenges that the oil and gas industry are playing. As the minister has pointed out, it is very important for us to have a good, strong oil and gas industry, and much like she's also pointed out, the oil and gas industry needs to have good, viable municipalities. And I think this is a great effort to try and recognize those important pieces and try and move forward in the consultations in the future to try and come up with solutions, as the minister has already pointed out. This is about trying to find that balance, and the government, I believe, has found a balance at this point to try and mitigate the costs and mitigate the challenges, but at the same time look forward to how we're going to have the long-term solution. But this is also going to be a challenge for my members, because when you see the reduction in the assessed values of property, that immediately plays onto the tax roll of those municipalities. When we see a tax holiday for new drills, those incentives are great incentives to help industry, and I credit them for that. But the challenge is those municipalities are going to be out those dollars. And then with the change to the well drilling equipment tax, that again is a tax that was identified as a need to be put in place and maintained in place over the years to recognize the extreme infrastructure challenges that come forward to the municipalities when exploration takes place. But I think in the interest of trying to work towards a solution, those are items that my members will struggle with, but I believe they will be willing to try and come forward to try and do their part for the economy. It gets to be a challenge at times when these revenue streams are changed. But I think the minister has pointed out too that the significant changes in this will take place further down the road rather than immediately, especially when it comes to the well drilling tax and the new taxes on new drills. I haven't had a great opportunity to fully address the impacts and dig into them deeply, but I am taking the word and the very high level assessment of them to realize that this is nowhere near what we were looking at under the proposals under the assessment model review going forward, and that's why it is much easier to work with and to take as a first step in this process. As the minister pointed out, we still have items that we need to address. The well drilling equipment tax was one that they've decided to set aside, but one of the biggest challenges with this whole process is the unpaid taxes. And I've talked to the minister numerous times, and you heard her talk about the need to address that in the near future too. We've seen $81 million 2 years ago, $173 million last year of unpaid taxes. And if we don't fix that in the near future, all these modifications are going to be for naught, because it is going to leave my member municipalities without that ability to make sure that the tax collection is treated the same way as every other taxpayer. Education property tax fits into that piece somewhat too, and I'm hoping that we can come up with a solution for that process where we have got education property taxes that we have to remit to the province, and yet we can't always collect them through that unpaid taxes approach. So I believe that we'll be able to work with the province and through Treasury or the Ministry of Education to try and come up with those solutions for that. But altogether, there is a cumulative impact of many of these changes, and you heard the minister talk about police funding and the funding for seniors facilities, all those pieces. They are increasing the cost of running municipal government. So I just want to make sure that in the future we have those conversations so we address the real impacts of all of this. But thank you again to the minister, and thank you to the province for coming to what feels and what appears to be a middle-of-the-road approach on this. And I think it just indicates their willingness to work with us and their commitment to working over the next 3 years for other modifications makes us feel comfortable that we will be at the table. So thank you.
Excellent. Please, Mr. McMillan, go ahead.
Well, good morning. I'd like to also start off by thanking the minister. She has come into a very difficult file at a very difficult time for Alberta, a file that is taking a lot of work by all participants here and many others. I think the announcement today certainly speaks to a very pragmatic approach. Our industry had worked very hard and was looking for some changes to the assessment process. We think that there's some foundational pieces there that need to be fixed or changed for the long term, and that is now being put on hold for the time being. But the minister recognizes the need for ensuring that we can create jobs, that we can address some of the issues that are facing us today, and there are a lot facing us today. And I know that all participants through the review process and all participants today want to see Alberta succeed. And what has been put forward today will be impactful, that it will help to position Alberta as a place that is more competitive, that can create more jobs and get our feet under us and be more solid going forward. So I guess I want to keep my comments fairly short today, but I do want to recognize that a lot of work has gone into this, that there are issues that are yet to be resolved, but we certainly are committed to working with the government, with municipalities in the months and years ahead, because these aren't easy challenges. They are big, and they've built up over a long period of time. And we want to see Albertans, we want to see municipalities, and we want to see industry be successful in the months and years ahead. So again, thank you to the Minister for today's announcement. It will be impactful for attracting investment into Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Goodman, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. There's no question today we have a positive result coming out of a lot of work that has been put in by municipalities, by the Minister, and also by the Cabinet of Alberta and under the Premier's leadership. So we do want to acknowledge that. For close to 100 years, we've been developing energy in this province, and we actually have a very bright future moving forward. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity despite the difficulties that we face. Changes have occurred in the past, and changes will occur in the future. With the changes that have now been put in place here, we can see a lot of benefit for rural Albertans and rural municipalities, for the jobs that they rely on, and I believe for investment going forward. This will make a difference. We look forward to the next phase of working with the government and with our colleagues at the RMA, and we hope that coming out the other side, we'll see, again, more positive change going forward to ensure that jobs come back to this province. So with that, thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. And with that, I think we will now go to the phones. We will ask those on the line to say their name and outlet before asking their question. Operator, can you please put the first caller through?
Yes, the first caller is Emma Graney, Globe and Mail. Emma, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much. It's, as you said, Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail. This question is for the Minister. Actually, I have two, so I'll just put them both out there. Back in December, the government was looking at this proposal that would actually potentially have caused a 40% reduction in property taxes. So are these options and those kind of large cuts in property taxes, are they completely off the table now, or is there still a possibility that they will be followed up? And my second question, forecasts have oil demand pretty low for years. I mean, the IEA says that demand growth could potentially have completely finished. So what evidence do you have that making these changes will actually do anything at all to create jobs and increase revenues for the province, given the state of the oil sector and forecasts over the next few years? Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for the questions. It's nice to hear from you again. I'll start with the first question with respect to the scenarios. So the original 4 scenarios would have seen a reduction between 7 and 20% of assessed value for municipalities. Those have been paused, and that was the first decision I made as a minister. And what I feel is really critical at this time is we had to define what is the problem we're solving. And I felt that the problem we needed to solve was for viability and sustainability for both industry and municipalities at this time, with so much going on with the COVID-19 pandemic, the world economic contraction. We just really felt that this was not a time to go into that level of change. However, those will be reviewed along with all partners in an open and transparent discussion before any changes are made 3 years from now. With respect to your second question, I don't believe that the energy industry is a thing of the past. I do believe that we need to be nimble and we need to be responsive, but I also believe that there's a bright future, as was said previously by the last speaker, with respect to our energy. And I believe that Alberta leads the way in terms of our environmental record as well as our human rights record. And so I believe that we do have a bright future and that we need to position ourselves to maximize that bright future for the benefit of all Albertans. Thank you for the questions, Emma.
Okay, great. Thank you. Operator, can you please put the next question through?
Yes, Chris Epp, CTV.
Thank you. Minister, the question for you, I suppose, is you say you believe the energy industry has a bright future, but, I mean, the numbers don't support that right now, where there's a lot of other industries and smaller businesses starting up that would say they'd love to have these kinds of incentives to stay in business and have some forgiveness of property tax to get going. So why are you choosing one over the other? And then if just maybe, Al, you can step in after that and respond to do you think you're going to sell this to municipalities? I mean, I guess you already have, but do you expect support from municipalities who are saying we haven't been paid taxes for a few years and now we're just going to take even less? Don't you think there's going to be some pushback? Thank you.
I'll start. Thank you for the question. I do believe that this was a nuanced and surgical approach. It was much less than what was originally proposed. And as I said, when I landed into this issue, I knew that we had to make some tough decisions. And one of my first calls was actually to Al to discuss what was happening and how do we go from here. I believe that one of the mistakes we could make is keep municipalities whole, for lack of a better word, and allow them 100% accessibility and drive out investment further from the province. I don't think that that's a win for municipalities, for industry, or ultimately for Albertans. But I'll turn it over to you, Al.
Well, thank you. And yeah, this came to us on Friday, so this is going to be an item that we are going to have to address with my members, and it will take some understanding on it, because we did see the scenarios that were coming our way, and this is a significantly smaller assessment change that compared to what even the smallest scenario was. The big challenge on this is going to be those areas where the exploration is going to be taking place, and they are going to have those costs that are going to be in front of them from the development of oil and gas. And to have that removed is going to be a challenge. But I do believe that our members, in talking with them, the majority of our members have identified the fact that they want to be part of the solution to try and help this move forward. And the fact that they're going to be included in that solution process in the future is an important piece in this whole process. But yes, we are going to see some pushback, and understandably so, because these are tax dollars, and these are decisions that are not being made by those municipalities on their revenue pieces. These are made outside of their ability to make the decisions. They just have to respond. I believe we will see them make the adjustments that they have to make, but those are going to be tough adjustments. And I totally empathize with them in the challenges that they were coming forward, but I do believe they will see this as their chance to be part of the solution for the province.
Excellent. Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Andrea Rosalita, Westlock News.
Thank you, Minister. This is Andrea Rosalita with Westlock News. So my first question is for the Minister. This reads a little bit like a 3-year appeasement for both sides. That takes you kind of close to the end of your term. So I'm wondering if you actually have a plan for this longer-term review that includes those unpaid taxes that municipalities have been. These want to be part of the solution. I'm wondering if you were part of this one, this sort of 3-year solution for now, if you and your members were part of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I will start by saying that this actually will straddle, the impacts of this will straddle the end of our mandate actually into the next mandate, whoever forms the next government. But I do believe that part of the challenge is not what you do, but often how you do it. And I believe that when I got into this role, the first thing that was a priority to me was to go out and speak with as many municipal leaders as I could, as many assessors, as many from industry, because we really needed to understand the whole of what we were doing. And I believe that critical going forward, after we get through this economic downturn, will be to establish an open and frank conversation between all parties so that they all feel that the how was honoring to them, that everybody had an ability to be at the table with their voices heard. And I believe that's what we've started. This is the beginning of a conversation and not the end of one. I will turn it back over to you, Al.
Well, thank you, Minister. And were we part of crafting the wording of this solution? I will say no, we weren't. We were part of informing the Minister as to the challenges that have taken place. And my opening comments were about the fact that the Minister has covered this province and met with many of our members and heard the concerns. So that's, I guess, our initial input, and our members felt gratified that they could at least get their concerns out there and share the challenges that were coming with those scenarios. As to the well drilling equipment tax decision and the holiday for the first 3 years on new drills, we were not part of this building that structure. That was that came from within the ministry, but it is also based on conversations that I think the minister had with us over the last 6 weeks.
The press secretary has offered me an opportunity, not on this question, but the one previous, about a reference was made about tax breaks for the industry. Obviously, this is a time of lost investment, and we're trying to get jobs created again. But I would just want to be clear that from the oil and gas industry's perspective, we have seen over time the assessment values, in our opinion, and we can go into a lot of depth here, and I don't think this is the appropriate venue, but the assessment values that are being used in the assessment, we would say aren't accurate. And the 4 options that came forward in the assessment review were correcting that. And there was a substantive change from what is currently being used to all 4 of those options on the assessment base. What was decided by the minister was that she wants to do more consultation before she moves forward with correcting what has built up over a long period of time. And in the interim, she has made some decisions that will have some interim relief. So from our point of view, I would want to be clear, we don't view this as tax breaks, that in fact that this is an interim measure as we're working to correct a broader system issue that is built up over a very long period of time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Bob Weber, Canadian Press.
Thanks very much. A couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to ask the minister, this is a 3-year temporary solution. What is going to be different 3 years from now that's going to allow either your government or whoever replaces it to come up with a permanent solution? What do you see coming down the road that's going to make a permanent solution possible? And second, to Al, I'm wondering if you have received any assurances that these property taxes under this new 3-year interim deal will actually be paid. If the government has assured you that it will make sure those monies are actually winding up in municipal coffers, or if companies will just continue to just not pay their taxes if they feel they can't.
Thank you for the questions. I'm sure Al and I are going to get a lot of opportunity to discuss this today. I do want to acknowledge, although the question was posed to Mr. Kemry, I do want to acknowledge that unpaid property taxes was a long discussion. Over the 8 weeks that I spoke with municipalities and industry, it was a long discussion within the cabinet table. It is a concern, and it is something that we are committed to looking at. Having said that, at this time in history with the global recession, the pandemic, and the energy collapse, I felt that these measures were too abrupt, and I feel that this 3-year window was really about solving for viability. We wanted to get municipalities and industry and ultimately Albertans to the other side. Hopefully COVID, for one, will be in our rearview mirror, and then we'll have the opportunity to look at this, but we will not stop. We, early in the new year, will be sitting down with our municipal partners and industry partners to identify the best path forward, to have these conversations that I feel were well-intended but misplaced last time. I believe that people, again, it's not the what but the how. All of the stakeholders need to feel that they have a place at the table and that we really truly have an understanding. Ultimately, it's an understanding of what we're doing for ratepayers across this province, both residential and commercial, across all industries. That's where we'll find the win. And I'll turn it over to you, Al.
Well, thank you again, Minister. And I make no bones about this. The unpaid taxes is our number one concern over the last 3 years. It's been our number one advocacy challenge. It has got some of our member municipalities on the cusp of not being able to pay their bills. We had meetings this summer with an individual municipality who received notification from one of their operators, and I'll back up. They were told last year that they were going to be without property taxes because 2 of their companies went under. This year, 2 more of them told them that they were not going to pay their taxes. That's 80% of their taxes in 1 year. That is not a process that we can be sustainable municipalities under, and that's why we keep advocating it. as part of the other scenario discussions, that was one of our key points still. Even if we change all the assessment, there were no guarantees or no assurances that that was going to be a system that was fixed. And so we can make all these changes. And I'm going to qualify a little bit because not all the industry are the ones who are not paying their taxes, but there is a sector of the industry that has chosen to take that approach. And none of the other people that I've talked to can respect that approach. In the coffee shops through the summer, when I would meet with either councils or when I would meet just in my own local coffee shop, people are asking, how do they get away with that when everybody else, every other non-residential taxpayer, every residential taxpayer has to pay their taxes? And so that is an ongoing concern. The minister and I have had, as she has pointed out, endless conversations on this, and we are still looking as a non-solution if we do not have that item fixed. And so that is one of the items that needs to move forward. All the other taxpayers within the province have their obligation to pay their taxes. We just believe the industry needs to have that same obligation.
So I appreciate the question on the unpaid property tax. Let me be clear up front, actually. Yes, there are difficult times out there for many in Alberta, both in business and individuals, and these are challenging times. From an oil and gas perspective, property taxes have to be paid. We understand there's a problem. We look forward to working with the RMA, all the municipalities, as well as the minister to resolve that problem. It is a concern, it's legitimate, and it's not acceptable going forward. It needs to be rectified. So we're committed to undertaking that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions today. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Yes, the next question is from John Watson, Today FM. John, your line is open. Please go ahead.
That's okay. Operator, I think we'll just move on to the next caller, please.
Thank you. Chris Varco, Calgary Herald.
Hi, I have two questions. Just going back to the unpaid property taxes. To begin with Al, can you explain, Al, precisely what changes do you need to see from the provincial government to address the unpaid taxes? And separately for the minister, what commitment are you making to solve the issue, and will that include legislative or regulatory changes to make sure that oil and gas companies pay these unpaid taxes?
Okay, Chris, and I'll start off on that. And what we do need is the legislative or regulatory change. This does not happen on its own, and that's obvious, and we understand the industry's had a tough go. But this needs those regulatory changes that fill that loophole. And whether it's a situation where a special lien process can be put in place so that those who are choosing not to pay their taxes put all their assets at value. Because often we end up with a situation where the industry says, well, here, why don't you just foreclose on these assets? And so now you have a list of assets that are depleted oil and gas assets with an extreme environmental liability. We shouldn't have to take on that responsibility of environmental liability without, just in order to collect what is owed through the system. And so I think it is a legislative and regulatory change. And we need to sit down with industry. You just heard from EPAC, and they support the fact that we need to have a resolve on this. I will say again, it's not all the players in the industry, but it is enough that it's $173 million last year. And a good percentage of that were people who just chose not to pay their taxes rather than bankruptcies. So there is both pieces. The bankruptcy piece, we're pretty low on the list as secured creditors, but when it comes to operational companies, we should be number one on the list, and they should be looking after those obligations.
And I'll follow up. Thank you for the question. Al, I concur with you. You know, we have talked about this at length. I am not in a position today to make any specific commitment other than to say this. As I started my mandate on the 25th of August with calls immediately to stakeholders right from day one, I will continue to do so. I believe that the best solutions come from the people who live this experience, both on the industry and the municipal leadership side. I believe that we need to speak to the people who are in those roles to understand what we can do and what we should do. And I just want to clarify that prior to 2018 Virginia Hills decision, municipalities did have this lever. It's not a new idea. It was what was the reality in Alberta for the vast majority, for all the years up till 2018. And so I don't think that we're reinventing the wheel here, but we need to figure out the best way forward to affect this change and to support both municipalities and industry, ultimately to make life better for all Albertans. It looks like Tim's going to comment as well.
Yes, thank you, Minister, and thank you for the question from the reporter. I guess I would want to stay at the front end. We also think that there can be some meaningful work done here and potentially some meaningful changes. It is an important issue when there's any unpaid taxes, and our industry is like many others, that not every business is successful. I guess I would take some exception with the numbers that have been put forward. We have done a similar search on the numbers. It is a very small percentage of taxes which go unpaid. And I think that there are some legitimate concerns about the mechanisms that municipalities have to rectify those unpaid taxes. So we're also committed to work with the municipal sector and with the government to ensure that this is an efficient system. But I would just want to be clear that we would take substantial difference on what the full number is. It would be a small percentage, but still a very meaningful amount in some municipalities that we most certainly have to recognize. In some municipalities, it could be very substantive to them.
Excellent. Thank you. And that will conclude today's news conference. Thank you to our guests and for the callers for joining us as well. Thank you.